Hi, my name is GONZALEZ. I'm a strategic customer advisor at SAP. I would like to explain to you today how to unleash the power of the modular architecture of SAP S/4HANA Cloud. Or maybe easier, how to transform big monolithic ERP systems into composable ERP systems with the concept of keep the core clean. Well, let's have a look at the challenge space. We have so many customers that have highly customized their ERP systems, which brings their systems to old releases that they really cut off of standard innovations that basically can put in the next release because it fear to do it, because it can't find those people anymore that did the customizations, or they fear that things will happen that they don't reckon. So just imagine you have these kind of ERP systems, and then you get new topics like mobile or omni-channel or digital to businesses. All these actually forced them to even customize more than they did before, so the challenge space became even bigger. And then it doesn't really matter what kind of new innovation stuff you have to bring in, you customize and customize and customize. So imagine the challenge space is even bigger. You have one ERP system, you have two. Or just imagine it's not two, imagine it's like 7. Or one of my main customers has 125 highly customized ECC systems. So the challenge space can be quite big. And just imagine you would be the decider, the CIO, who has to make a decision, how can I keep these kind of systems flexible? And how can I change, or how can I adapt to new innovative stuff? Or how can I bring in new processes? So back to the core of the challenge. What if we could solve the challenge by going back to near standard and creating a nearly clean core? Then this ERP strategy from SAP, our development strategy, there is in the middle of all is the BTP. And this will help us to explain how we can develop systems that enables the customer to be flexible. And the BTP with its 5 main topics, data analytics, integration, automation, extensions and development, and artificial intelligence is in the middle of this concept. And then, even if the customer has many ERP systems for all different kinds of areas, this is the foundation and the architecture that enables us to bring suite qualities into the game. What do I mean with this? The suite qualities on the BTP and the core systems, giving our customers a seamless user experience, a consistent security identity management, which is really important, maybe one of the big differentiators out there in the market. Then one workflow inbox, the aligned domain models. The one domain model is a great concept, the APIs and event. Embedded and cross-product analytics on the coordinated lifecycle management, and not last but least, end-to-end process blueprints. This is what they expect from us. So this target architecture of the BTP and the core systems, let's have a closer look at some of the components. Maybe one of the most important is integration. I even met a CIO last week. He said he didn't want to have integration anymore. He just wants to do data mesh, only that. I'll come to that later, but at the moment, I think it's not possible to get rid of integration because it's essential to connect other solutions, SAP and not SAP systems. And that's where I come in with our API management on the BTP, which helps us to standardize the way we actually collect and bring data somewhere and how we connect to other systems. And why is this important? If I want to go back actually to a clean core, I need even standardization in the way we talk to each other with applications. So it's really key to have a good integration suite to enable this. Then, for example, data analytics. For me, data is queen. It's in the heart of everything. This is where DataSphere kicks in. And even with some customers bringing them the semantic layer. What do I mean with that? Well, normally they just, look into the data, they pull it out or they replicate it, but it's just a technical view on the data. The semantic, it's lost. Nobody knows what the data is for. They have to actually re-innovate and find out what do I have to do with the data to get any kind of information out of it. So it's really essential to keep the semantic layer. And that's what DataSphere enabled us and also enables us to go in a data mesh way, which enables us not to only replicate data, but do a direct access. So this enables this whole architecture makes it possible for us to bring in new topics like sustainability, for example. We brought up a whole suite of sustainability SaaS solutions, which actually brings our customer a whole bundle of new innovative stuff without actually changing anything in the core. Just imagine we would have brought this into the core ERP system, how many customers would now have to start heavily upgrading to do any kind of sustainability scenario. It also enables us to bring new topics like Catena X in, which is a business network, because that's when data comes from the outside and then has to be worked with SaaS solutions and then was used with the ERP systems and other systems. And even here, the integration system plays a real big role because it enables us to standardize the integration of business networks into our environment of the data. So these new topics are essential. So let's breathe for a moment, because this is a lot of information before we go to the next step. The next step is to think about how can I bring my customers back to standard. Well, let's have a look at the architecture again. If the customers think about migrating an ECC system to an S4 system, it's essential to really think about going back to standard and do real transformation and not just put the ECC as good as possible, the same it was, somehow into an S4HANA system. And why is this so important? One of my customers had over 4,000 customizations in the systems, and only by migrating to S4HANA, they went rid of all of them and had only 20 left. This was only back to standard. There was nothing newly developed or any kind of extensibility built. It was just back to standard. Now imagine the scenario from the beginning where I said where the challenge space is, what would happen to such a landscape if we could start going back to standard in this kind of way. So how can we now come from back to standard to keep the core clean, which is the next step which you would have to do. So coming back to the BTP and the extensibility concept, this is where it really gets interesting. Because if I start doing my extensions differently, as I did before, by keep the core clean concept, a lot of these extensions, and I mentioned it earlier, they move up into the business technology platform and out of the core. So the core gets cleaner. You will see, as you see on the picture here, that it will never go away. Or, at least not at the moment, maybe one day, but you really get rid of a lot of stuff that makes it impossible to do an easy release change. So this is really important to understand, that keep the core clean enables us to do the extensibility of systems differently. So for example, don't worry, you don't have to read it all, and I won't read it all also, but we actually distinguish between two kinds of extensibility options. One is on-stack extensibility, which is in the core of S4, and one is side-by-side extensibility on the BTP. And just for example, when do I do on-stack? If it is highly integrated to the business process, if you have to be really near to the database, if you have to be really near to the process, then you would do an on-stack development extensibility. If you have things that can be loosely coupled, or, mobile shouts like being a side-by-side scenario, and you see a lot more here, that's actually when you go on the side-by-side scenario and to do the extensibility on the business technology platform. Well, let's have a deeper look at what this actually means. We have a 3-tier extensibility model for SAP S/4HANA Private Cloud Edition and on-premise. And tier 1, we actually decide if we have to do an on-stack extensibility, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, or if we do a side-by-side extensibility. But the most important part is that this tier 1 scenario enables us to develop extensions that are release ready. So I get rid of this lock-in, not to be able to make a release change. That's really important. We should really do as many extensions as possible only on the tier 1. But as you know, to do extensions, you need APIs. But not all APIs from S/4HANA are published. So you can't actually get for all kinds of scenarios a published API. So how do we solve this? This is where tier 2 kicks in, where we actually do a custom wrapper around the API we want to call. And then with this custom wrapper, we can, of course, stay as close as possible to the ABAP cloud development structure. We can actually even use APIs that are not published. So a really interesting scenario to even take the system you already have into the new world. This brings me to tier 3, which is a classical ABAP development. This is all the legacy stuff. These are the 4,000 extensions from the one customer I mentioned earlier, where you have to close look at this and have a look, what can I do with all these extensions? The first thing is you can find out, going back to standard, you can retire quite a lot of them because it's already done in an S/4HANA system. It's not always that you can just, you find a functionality that you can rid of it. Sometimes you find out you can do it even in a better way, and you don't have to do it the way you always did it. The second thing is that you find out, how can I bring these extensions away from the tier 3 and bring them into tier 1 by re-innovating it or renovating it lately. So what does it mean? I have a look if I can do the whole extensibility or the extension in a way a tier 1 would be done, and look if I do it on stack or as a side by side, and then I can get rid of it in the tier 3. And in the end, there still will be, at least that's many of these customers having many ERP systems that have been grown for many years, there will still be some tier 3 scenarios where we will not get rid of this code. But just imagine, coming back to my one customer example, 4,000 extensions. You are not really able to do anything because you're not brave enough to change things. You never know what happens. Only having 20 left. So on these 20, they are then tier 3. And then if they do a release change, they just have to have a real close look on these few and not on all the other 4,000s anymore. So I think this makes it clear why this kind of concept can really bring you out of this scenario and can keep the core clean. So coming back to the architecture I showed earlier, this is what also enables us to bring new kind of innovations in. Because if we do it this way, it's a lot easier to come up with new stuff like artificial intelligence. Just imagine, you saw what's happening within the last few months. Just imagine we would have to upgrade our ERP core systems in the speed innovation is happening in the area of artificial intelligence. We would be upgrading every week. And this is not possible. So there are some kind of innovative stuff out there like artificial intelligence, which is so fast that it makes totally sense to put it into a cloud environment like the Business Technology Platform, and then gives us the possibility to do a lot faster innovative stuff, especially if it's so fast moving as artificial intelligence. Or I mentioned earlier, Catena X and sustainability are also topics that are really fast developing at the moment, and where the customer needs solutions now and not with the next release maybe after 12 months. So if we look at this concept, what changes actually to the future? Well, just go back. When now new topics come in, you will see a lot of new SaaS applications kicking in. Especially we will see like in Catena X and sustainability, and you never know where else, that we will have like SaaS solutions that will cover an entire area of what the customer needs. So we will not put all of the stuff as we did maybe many years ago, all into the core and make the core even bigger, but we will try to put this outside into a SaaS environment. And you will see even more innovations coming on the BTP, like extensions ready to be plugged in or natural extensions on the system. We will see a lot of more artificial intelligence kicking in. And what you see here now is a lot of innovative stuff only brought to the customers by Business Technology Platform and the cloud SaaS solutions. So what about the core? Well, of course, we have a lot of innovations still in the core, but it's not the fast-moving stuff or where we really have to bring in new innovative stuff like the green ledger, what's coming now, or the artificial intelligence topics, and even more, even in financial areas. But of course, we are innovating further on the core elements of our S/4HANA system, but it's just a different pace, which you will see a little bit later in the presentation. But it sounds so good, doesn't it? But there's always a but for the customers, because they could go this way now, couldn't they? But what I mentioned now is that, as you maybe heard, all right, the business technology is a cloud, business technology platform is a cloud environment. And the SaaS solutions on the data foundation are also a cloud environment. So what is the difference now? What do we have to also do? Well, I mentioned earlier that this only works if it's all really near to the nearest or the latest release. So just imagine you were a customer and you have, what did I say, 3, 7, or 120 ECC ERP systems in your own hand. And now imagine you would have to keep them all near to the newest release. No way. This is where cloud kicks in.
And this is why we say to our customers, we need to have even the S4 systems in the cloud. And a real cloud, which means that we actually take care of the releases together with the customers, that guarantees them that all this is in the cloud and stays near to the nearest release or to the latest release, that enables us to bring in innovations really fast without waiting for the next release cycle, maybe in a year or even longer, because the customer, even with a clean core, are not able to make a release change. But how? So how can we prepare? What's the ticket to success? Well, the ticket to success, we have to help our customers. We can't wait until they find their own way to the cloud. They tried this for many years. So we can help them to grow with SAP, with our S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition, or we can help them to rise with SAP with the S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition. So what is the difference between these two? Well, the public edition is a very standardized version. It means if customers really highly want to standardize what they do and don't want to do a lot of extensions, they don't want to do any extensions, they want to have best practice, highly standardized, then it would be actually the target market for the grow with SAP customers. And even big customers like the one I mentioned with the 120 systems, they will find out that many of these systems are already also that they can take them into a public edition version, especially if they have areas in their whole company that don't need standard, that don't need any extensions, and they want to be clear to a clear standard. And then on the other hand, you will see rise with SAP customers with a private edition. This is mainly the market of our installed base. And of these big system landscapes I mentioned earlier, where they have also a lot of extensibility stuff. And even if they want to keep the core clean, they need an environment which is not highly standardized, where they can do a lot on their own. So this brings me also to a second layer of differentiation. And as you can see, Growth SAP has a biannual release. This is actually every 6 months. Yeah? And the private edition has major releases every other year. So you see that's the pace difference in these systems. Or you can see from the features, there's continuous feature delivery on the public edition, because a public cloud edition is a SaaS solution, as a typical SaaS solution is, you just get an update, and then the next version is there. And in a private edition, you of course have to take a little bit more, things to do before you go to the next release. And you can see the roadmaps are also quite impressive. 490 plus roadmap innovations to 2308 version on the public edition, and 560 roadmap innovations to 2033. A little bit pending, maybe it'll be more or less. So how do we now shift innovations increasingly to the BTP? Well, you will see that all of the scenarios, these extensions I mentioned earlier on the BTP, will be shifted to the public edition. So they will be just in the public edition. Any new extensibility will just be there. And for the private edition customers, they will have to opt into them and say, I want it or I want it not. And this is especially in this area I show you here on the right-hand side, is, as you heard earlier, things like sustainability. Catena X is such an area. Green Ledger, very, very exciting concept. Situation handling. And you will see many more coming that we will actually build in this way I just showed to you. This brings us to modularize and modernize the core and make it stable and modern. But we will see that we will do a lot of the development in cloud native, as you can see on the right-hand side, which then will keep this core clean, stable, but highly integrated. And that you will, if it really works out well, we will not have any actually modifications in the core if it works out well, and a few more features. So now have a look at this, maybe at the last vision. This is the core today, and this is what also already happened. We have a lot of BTP services on top, as I showed in the architecture. What you will see is that many more of these modules will kick in with the years coming. So the whole BTP area will have a lot of new extensibility versions inside, a lot of extensions the customers can consume, so that one day we will even be able maybe to reduce the core and build back stuff, so make it even more lean and even more standardized as we have it today. This transformation into a hybrid of ABAP core and modular BTP apps. And this just as a handout, because I know it's difficult to read it now, but I wanted to put it into presentation so that you can later on have a closer look. And this is more a view from the end-to-end process view on this whole scenario. This enables us to bring our customers an intelligent and sustainable enterprise to compose, recompose, and decompose as the business actually needs it. With the cloud ERP in the center, brings us the seed qualities together with the SAP Technology Platform, Business Technology Platform, and our huge ecosystem, working on the end-to-end processes. And let's get clever together. Have a look at this, read the QR code, and then maybe if you want to, see if you can do more courses. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you. I'll be happy to connect. Read the QR code. You will find me there on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to answer questions also on LinkedIn. And I think we have also now a Q&A session. So if you have any questions right now, feel free to write them into the chat.
Live Q&A.
Hi, back again. Now it's time for questions. I have some people also helping me, just in case there are a few more. Now I have to see if I can read them here on the right-hand screen. With highly transactional extensions, it would be more for on-stack. That's one question I just see. When a customer is looking to move customization out of ERP into the cloud, if they are developing very highly chatty transactional extensions, would that be candidate for on-stack or side-by-side? It would be on-stack, because it has to be near to the core due to the highly transactional extensions. So the next one was great session. Thank you to bring the complete ERP product strategy. Thank you very much. That's very kind. Is there any plan to integrate gRPC integration with SAP? To be honest, I can't answer this. Is somebody in the chat who can answer this? So I'm not sure if that's possible. Then, of course, we will share the presentation. Also, it's recorded if you want to talk track. And then, of course, you can talk via LinkedIn to me, and I can explain also off the track if you want to. Great session to bring the complete SAP product strategy into context for every customer. Thank you very much. So I don't have any further questions I can see. So thank you very much for listening today. It was really a pleasure to be here. I hope next time we see us on site, and if not, of course, connect to me on LinkedIn, and then we will see if I can actually do more for you if you have any questions. Goodbye. Enjoy the rest of the event.